After my last video on sex appeal maxing, I've been getting many different comments on topics such as masculine versus pretty boy, feminine features versus masculine features, so I decided to make this video. I am Max, and in this video, I'll be ending the pretty boy cope. I'll be doing a detailed breakdown of male dimorphism, indicators of health, and their roles in attractiveness. I will be going over the science behind sexual dimorphism, why it is necessary, how important it is, and how maxing out certain features will make you more dimorphic, and so forth. So sit back and settle, since there's much to uncover in a brief time frame. To start off, there seems to be a lot of confusion on this topic too. People will say guys like Vinnie the hacker or young Henry Cavill have ideal appeal because they are masculine with feminine features. But this is simply not true, and I will break down why. So what exactly is sexual dimorphism? Copy-pasting straight from Google, I get this. Sexual dimorphism is the condition where the two sexes of the same species exhibit different characteristics beyond the differences in their sexual organs. Pretty self-explanatory, as our gonads produce androgenic hormones that have an especially significant effect on our physical appearance and give indicators of our genetic package and develop during and after puberty, signaling fertility. Since you're here, I assume you haven't fallen for the trap of women aren't visual like men, or men aren't expected to be good looking like women are. We all know this is nonsense, and when you look at other species, the opposite, if anything, is true. This continues even for mammals, and even for our great ape cousins. Males in mammalian species that successfully procure many mates and are higher in the hierarchy often exhibit more sexual dimorphism than the average in the group. Elephant seals are an excellent example of intrasexual selection, in which males fight for dominance over a harem of females. The deer I showed you before interact in which the males will ram their antlers into one another, a sexually dimorphic trait. And those that win these tests have access to the most females. The same goes for the mountain bison. In fact, it's even more extreme for them. The male bison are hyper-aggressive, so they essentially outcast themselves from the females of their species, where they will butt heads year-round. Then, once breeding season comes along, the most dominant male in the hierarchy, directly associated with their physical dimorphism and dominance, will leave the male group and copulate with all the fertile females. The mammalian structure of sexual and natural selection dynamics results in: why do mammals behave this way? Some of you may be wondering this. Why is it this way? Why does it have to be this way? This is unfair. There are many ways to break this down. Firstly, let us think of it in terms of raw sexual economics. Paraphrasing from a FACEandLMS video, a man produces more sperm in one day than a woman produces in her life. The female's egg is far more valuable than the sperm. Millions of sperm will rush to the same egg, real life, is analogous to that. That's one way to put it. But personally, I think it makes more sense to look at it through an action/reaction, cost-effective lens. Let's just think of a scenario. A long time ago, say 100,000 years ago, two archaic humans, one male and one female. Let's make them cave Adam and Eve, for example. Find themselves isolated together in a cave for some time. Just by virtue of the situation, both have sex. Not just once, but multiple times throughout days, weeks, maybe even months. As a result of this, they are likely to have sex during the female's ovulation cycle, and thus become pregnant. All is said and done, right? No, not really. Let's take a detailed breakdown of the pros and cons of each party involved, as, like every action, there is a consequence, and the results are not equally distributed between the sexes. The pros of the male were that he passes on his DNA, resulting in the survival of his genetic material. As for the cons, there were virtually none other than losing sperm. The pros of the female were that she passed on her DNA just like the male. There were no immediately, but in approximately a week's time, she will begin to feel sick and start vomiting. She's pregnant, and the initial fetus releases unavoidable waste that makes her sick. That is just the beginning. For the next 9 months, she will have a vulnerable living organism growing inside her. There are no maternity leaves in Mother Nature, so she is vulnerable to predators and other humans killing. If she gets hurt and the baby dies, the baby will literally necrose inside her and destroy her organs. Her immune system is compromised, and her need for nutrition and resources increases to support the baby. Once her pregnancy ends, it doesn't stop there. An extremely common cause of death among women pre-medical era was childbirth, often due to blood loss. Now she must harbor an infant and nurse it to a state of independence, once again a very draining and cost-heavy process. Hence, given this massive cost-benefit difference, women must select far more harshly on traits. Also important to note, Mother Nature has also made it that men have a higher sex drive than women, meaning men are more willing to fuck and women are more inclined to be pickier. Sexual drive is like hunger, and a hungry man will eat more plus settle for less, while a satiated will not eat as much and only eat when the quality is good. Looks are an indicator of your genetic quality, so if the woman is going to go through all that trouble, she must ensure the genetic material in the form of the sperm she will be receiving is of high quality to ensure that the offspring are genetically fit individuals themselves with a higher chance of survival. It is pretty self-explanatory at this point. Deny it all you want, but humans are inherently a social species. Hierarchies are as natural as taking a shit, despite what people will tell you. They are universal to all great apes and virtually all mammals. Status matters because a high-status male is higher in the hierarchy. They have more access to food, resources, power, and security, and as a consequence, mates, as they are the most secure option to breed with. Again, as stated before, a lot of the hierarchical behaviors in animals. Hierarchical behavior is basic shit you will learn in high school biology under the topic of animal behavior. Don't be so naive to think this does not apply to you. I specifically say resources as this changes over time, but at our current age, it seems as if its central mediator is money, etc. And once upon a time, it was based on a man's physical labor and merit. Therefore, the more resources a man has, the more likely he is to provide and protect the female during her pregnancy and throughout the time she raises her infants. Hence, she makes an educated choice on which male will give her that security. How do these factors interact with each other? In the past, I think they would have interacted more with each other due to the fact that virtually all acquirement of resources was based on physical merit, etc. And money kinda changes that. But the links still apply. A good-looking male will tend to have a higher status and more opportunities to acquire resources. We observe this as the halo effect. All of you are probably familiar with where better-looking people will be treated better, even in corporate settings and so on. Good-looking people make about 12% more money than less appealing folks, and that attractive real estate brokers bring in more money than their less attractive peers. Sexual dimorphism versus indicators of youth and health. I believe this is something fundamental that's failed to understand. Often confuse indicators of youth with feminine features. Sexual dimorphism is almost always a positive. Yes, there are certain extremes in some instances where too much dimorphism is present, but this really isn't an issue for most, and a lot of times it is indicative of an underlying hormonal regulation issue. Being a clinically recognized medical condition/abnormality gives a sense of why the said trait is not seen as attractive, as it indicates terrible health and genetics, which are unfit for survival. What is the distinction between the two then? It's pretty clear. Indicators of youth and health are favored in both sexes, whereas a dimorphic trait, whether male or female, is only favorable in one. This idea that certain feminine features look good on men is just dumb, as feminine features is the antithesis of a male feature, hence making the face less dimorphic and reducing its attractiveness. This is taking a Caucasian face and minimally changing soft features such as hair while emulating dimorphic traits. In the middle is and meaning androgynous. This is objectively the worst place to be in as an adult male or female, as it has zero dimorphic qualities on either side. Its features are an in-between blend across the board, something you would expect from a prepubescent child, an individual with a chromosomal disorder such as intersex, Klinefelter's, or a transsexual. Many people confuse feminine/androgynous traits with indicators of health, which I'll explain later. On the far left is closest for a male face, Dom. At least for a Caucasian male. All these features from the wider bigonial width, the hollow cheeks, the more prominent nose, the wider chin, the more deep setness of the eyes, the boxed off hairline, and strong cheekbones are on the masculine side. Any feature you would make more feminine on the far left would lower his sexual attractiveness objectively. And no, forward growth or not being recessed isn't dimorphic. But the bone mass and ideal ratios are. Indicators of youth and health are far different. They are often applicable universally across both sexes. Youth is not to be confused with prepubescent features, but rather features indicating that the individual has signs of good health and minimal aging, given they are post-puberty. What is an example of this? Collagen. I often see how having good skin and collagen is seen as a pretty boy feature, hinting it's not masculine. This is simply not true. Either you've been looking at too many roid heads with inferior skin quality, or fell for the meme that wanting to have good skin as a man is gay and feminine. All of this translates to good health with minimal biological aging, and likely a good diet plus skin genetics. Let's take a look at this study on perceived age and lifestyle. The specific contributions of 7 factors involved in health and beauty. Changes in collagen and elastic fibers are followed by rhytides, appearance, skin sagging, and loss of elasticity, figure D. But diet, through ingestion of sugar, can accelerate these signs of aging. Looking old for your age is an indicator of poor health. The concept of perceived age is predictive of mortality in elderly individuals, 5-6, and is associated with a higher risk of both morbidity and mortality, 7. Acute exposure to UV is associated with sunburn, DNA modifications, and immune suppression, but chronic, long-term exposure can lead to premature skin aging, photoaging, and skin cancer. This is just a short summary, but signs of aging are also linked with a poor diet, an accurate indicator of health predictive of early death, and also indicates skin damage and proclivity towards cancer. This is not a feminine feature, nor is it a masculine one. Instead, it is separate and is an indicator of health, something that is beneficial and preferable both between sexes and has very consistent traits that predict the health of an individual, be that male or female, and is totally unrelated to the sexual differentiation produced by the gonads. Hair quality. I specify hair quality, not just hair, as there are dimorphic preferences in hair regarding color, and this only refers to scalp hair, not facial hair. The clear indication is deficiencies. B vitamins that are crucial for cell function are associated with hair loss or hair thinning, along with folate and iron. It can also be indicative of a thyroid issue. Many autoimmune diseases, such as alopecia areata, target and kill hair follicles. This, to an observer, may indicate a malfunctioning immune system and hence is seen as a biological negative regarding the individual's genetic quality. Both male and female pattern baldness are indicative of a hormonal issue. Male pattern baldness is caused by an excess of DHT. It may or may not signal a problem with testosterone, whether it be too little or too much. The link is still unclear, but research shows men with male pattern baldness have an increased risk of developing heart disease and prostate cancer. Females can also develop female pattern baldness post-menopause. Up to 2/3 of women experience hair loss after menopause. This is a pretty obvious indicator, as if a female is post-menopause, she is no longer ovulating and therefore is infertile and cannot produce offspring. Like skin, both indicate old age and a lack of youth. However, the effectiveness of this may vary when considering the age of your target audience of women, so to speak. Lips. Now, I guarantee I've seen this one a lot. More feminine lips are ideal, etc. But this simply isn't true, as even though they are somewhat dimorphic, this idea that thin lips are a masculine trait is just absurd, and I'm including it because I've seen it said many times. Thin lips, especially a thin upper lip, are correlated with disorders such as Down syndrome or fetal alcohol syndrome, also known as a developmental or genetic disorder. You gotta be a real brainless chump if you think thin lips are a masculine trait. It's a trait that signals, I'm twisted and knocked around chump that needs help. Almost all the vertical profile measurements were greater in males than females. The only variables with no gender differences were lower, Leister, and upper Vermilion heights. Men with lower 2D, 4D tended to have more protrusive mandibles, noses, and lips. These facial features have been associated with more masculine appearance, supporting the role of androgens. The results indicated a sex effect, with females preferring fuller lips than males. Significant differences were also found between orthodontically treated subjects and untreated subjects, with untreated subjects preferring fuller lips. Taking this information into account, and my subjective opinion would want good-sized lips, with good colour and fullness. However, you wouldn't want colossal cocksucker James Charles tier lips that throw off the philtrum and chin balances of the lower third. In my opinion, something like a young Tom Welling from Smallville has a pretty good balance of these features, along with guys like Vinnie the Hacker. Now I will show you some examples to distinguish between male dimorphic features and features of youth and health. Danny Trejo, an individual with very high male dimorphism, but very low in indicators of health and youth, namely his skin and collagen. Jacob Sartorius, conversely ranking very high on indicators of health such as good collagen, full thick head of hair, and good lips, but severely lacking in male dimorphism, giving him the baby-faced look. Ideally, you want a good balance of both. The importance of each may differ depending on age. For example, I'm sure some grannies would dig Danny Trejo, and some middle schoolers would Sartorius. But in regards to what is relevant to us for females in their late teens and early mid-20s, a pretty good mix of high indicators of health plus youth and masculinity is needed for the broadest overall appeal. All of these examples are ideal. All have good collagen, a full head of hair, and good lips, yet they are still very dimorphic. Sometimes these are called meaesthetic or robust pretty boy. Meaesthetic is an okay terminology, but robust pretty boy does not suit, in my opinion, as the denotation pretty boy gives the idea that the individual is not masculine and is feminine in their features. But as I've clarified, this isn't necessarily the case. Meaesthetic is equal to masculine plus indicators of health and youth. Meaesthetic is not equal to masculine plus some feminine features. I hope I have clarified that out of the way. How to maximize on features of youth and health. I won't get into much detail because there are very detailed guides on this, but essentially they consist of around 1. Preserving male hair, stopping or reversing male pattern baldness, plus maximizing the appearance of hair density with things like minoxidil or finasteride, if needed to be compounded with microneedling ideally. 2. Maintaining skin quality with a good skincare routine. Don't fall into the meme that skincare is for women and gay people. Your skin is literally your lifeline of youth. Minimize sun damage and try to get rid of any acne or scarring. 3. Exfoliate your lips to brighten their color, which works pretty well. Feed it moist and prevent cracks. Finally, you can look into facial expansion devices. More of that in another video. Key male dimorphic features, and what you can do. Facial bones. There's already so much information on this one that it speaks for itself, and I won't spend too much time on it. To sum it up, your ideal face should be as closest to the left as possible, suiting to your phenotype, of course. Quick notes. Larger bigonial, deep-set hunter eyes, larger brow ridge, larger nose, dense, darker eyebrows, taller, broader chin, larger, more prominent cheekbones, thicker neck, straight hairline as opposed to rounded. Face theory is well covered on YouTube. Height. Height also falls under the category of dimorphic qualities because men have more of it than women. Height is inherently a masculine trait, so if you took an average-faced 5'9" guy and made him 6 foot, he would instantly become more masculine, plus attractive, and have more success with women. Women care far more about men's height than men care about women, and they want more of it than men. Women are more satisfied when their partner was 21 centimeters taller, whereas men are most satisfied when they were 8 centimeters taller. We show that for men, height is more important to the expression of satisfaction with one's own height than it is for women. Being short as a man doesn't necessarily make you feminine per se, but it detracts significantly from your masculinity, to the point where even when you have other masculine traits, a short height will overshadow other areas, and you will be seen as overcompensating. Case in point, many people look down on him, both figuratively and literally, because he's 5'6", and he'll always be seen as a coping manlet. Meanwhile, his 6'1" Giga Chad counterpart is respected and seen as a demigod. Height does not just affect your sex life, it impedes on so many other aspects. A Swedish study showed shorter men had a 2 times higher suicide rate. For men, every 2-inch increase in height had an average of a 9% reduction in suicide risk. 6 feet is top 18% of male height. However, in a study among CEOs, it was roughly 50th percentile. Only 4% of the population is 6'2" and above. However, among CEOs, it's 30%. An increase in height is correlated with more tremendous reproductive success in males. But it's fine though, because height doesn't matter, right? Shorter men have a 2-fold greater risk for suicide than taller men, according to a cohort study of more than 1 million men in this country. For every 5 centimeter, or 2 inches, increase in height, there was a 9% decrease in suicide risk. According to Pactris Magnusson, PhD, of Uppsala University and colleagues, the association remained even after accounting for prenatal development and socio-economic factors. The researchers reported in the July issue of American Journal of Psychiatry. Highly attractive people of both sexes earn at least 12% more than their less attractive coworkers. Several studies over the years have shown that height and salary are positively correlated. This is true, especially for men, who earn 2.5% more per inch of additional height. It also suggests that a person who is 6 feet tall is likely to earn $166,000 more than someone who is 5 feet 5 inches tall over a 30-year career. Human male height is associated with mate choice and intrasexual competition, and therefore potentially with reproductive success. I could go on, but you get my point. I want to stress the first bit though. Swedish studies showed shorter men had a 2 times higher suicide rate. The association remained even after accounting for prenatal development and socioeconomic factors. People like to virtue signal amongst the mainstream about this. But it's clear-cut as day that it has nothing to do with mere confidence and everything to do with the physical trait itself. It's genuinely asinine. I think I might bring in a detailed breakdown of height in dating in a separate video. For now, to give you an idea, 90% of women will reject a man who is 5'4" based solely on his height. 65% of women will reject a man who is 5'7" based solely on his height. 50% of women will reject a man who is 5'8" based solely on his height. 14% of women will reject a man who is 5'10" based solely on his height. 1.5% of women will reject a man who is 6 foot based solely on his height. 30% of women believe there is no such thing as being too tall. Over 94% of women will reject a man solely for being too short. Women want to feel smaller than a man, and without a substantial excess of height over her, she simply will not feel that way. Case in point. Just take a look at the comments. The amount of Blackpills is absolutely insane. Women are creaming over him. Trust me, there is a lot more. Let me remind you, the same people that virtue signal on Instagram, etc., that everyone is beautiful, looks are subjective, there is someone out there for everyone, #body positivity, behave in raw female sexual desire when they see male dominance. Women absolutely love it when men mog the fuck out of other men. They behave like this because it is hardwired in human nature and keep coping with mere social construct. This is an innately dimorphic trait that is attractive for obvious reasons. Hair. I've already gone over hair loss and thinning, so I will center this more around color and style. And when I say hair, I am only referring to head hair, but overall in men this time. Once again, referring to the dimorphism chart. Males have thicker, more dense eyebrows, indicating virility. Previous research shows that thicker eyebrows are typically perceived as more masculine and dominant, and are more attractive in male than female faces. If you have light eyebrows, dye them dark or use latecy as soon as possible if you don't already have a thick pair of eyebrows. Eyebrows can significantly increase the appearance of the eye area by increasing perceived hooding and PFL. Guys, an eyebrow transplant is a severely underrated surgery. In the sex appeal maxing video, I have seen many people not understand the dark triad's power. Women prefer darker hair on men. Whenever I see someone say that women prefer light-featured, cuck-high, trust pretty boys over dark triad masculine Mediterranean beasts, I can't help but howl in absolute amazement. It's already scientifically proven that women put dark features over fair features. I'm talking about having dark hair, dark eyes. In some cases there are exceptions. 5 o'clock shadow, tanned olive skin, and being tall. And it's not even because of the tall, dark, and handsome stereotypes. It's already proven that dark features are subconsciously associated with virility, sex, mystery, villainy, and danger, as this article suggests. Also, that's the same reason we males prefer fair women. I'm not talking only about blonde women, even if this is mostly the case. I'm talking about those of fair skin tone. We associate fairness with femininity, innocence, and purity. All cope nowadays anyway. That's why in the 1950s, the primary nuclear family stereotype was a dark husband and fair wife. Psychologists from the University of Liverpool, who worked with colleagues in Poland and Finland, found that it is not the love of danger that attracts women to dark-featured men, as previously believed, but a primitive desire to find a mate who appears mentally strong, confident, and physically attractive in order to have healthier children. Exhibiting dark triad traits such as Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy are also attractive to women. Several mainstream academic peer-reviewed studies have confirmed that women are sexually attracted to men who exhibit dark triad traits, likely because of women's evolutionary history. They want an alpha, a commander, someone that can provide them safety, supplies, and a strong offspring. Height is associated with leadership and strength. It's complicated to display all the characteristics mentioned above if there's a lack of height, since dark traits and stature are complementary. Guys, it's all about being a dark, abusive bad boy. At this point, these are the type to try and argue against this logic. Next, we can go on to facial hair. Once again, facial hair is sexually dimorphic. However, the ideal length may vary from person to person. If you have a weak jaw, you may need more to beard fraud. If you have a strong jaw, consider clean shaven, or a minimal but heavy stubble should be maintained and contoured to complement the angularity of the jaw itself. A beard disguises some of the lower third. So depending on your lower third, a beard can either improve or decrease your facial aesthetic. For example, a robust, strong lower third is attractive, and covering up with a beard will lower your attractiveness. In contrast, a weak, underdeveloped jaw benefits significantly by being disguised by thick facial hair. Compare actors Tom Hardy and Henry Cavill with and without a beard. While both look more masculine, Tom Hardy looks better with a beard, while Henry Cavill looks better clean-shaven. Body hair. A bit more complicated than the prior. I can't find too much that is definitive. But again, this may be a case-by-case basis, and more of a subjective taste among women. Just anecdotally, if you are lean and shredded, body hair can mask vascularity and definition, so consider trimming it or shaving it off. On the other hand, if you are on the softer end, body hair might act as a positive contribution to the large and manly look. Michelle Morone is an example of the latter, whereas Conor Murphy is an example of the former. Again, just cater to your own physique. As for studies, I found this. This study examined the effect of male torso hairiness on Finnish women's attractiveness ratings by presenting pictures of male torsos before and after the removal of body hair. We found that the woman's preferences correlated strongly with the hairiness of their current partners, suggesting that body hair may play a role in actual mate choice. We also found that when the woman's fertility was at its highest, they preferred males with less body hair, and that the postmenopausal woman demonstrated stronger preferences relating to male body hair than postmenopausal women. This study suggests that in the fertile period of their cycle, Finnish women perform more of the trait that is the current Western ideal of male beauty, hairlessness. Not very concrete, but hairiness seems to be more on the subjective side and should be considered on an individual basis. Muscles. Closet gays will debate much on this, but it is pretty straightforward. Dimorphism does not just begin and end in the face. Like height, muscles and frame also fall under this category. The answer is simple if you want the broadest appeal for women in their late teens, mid-20s. Muscles are a strong positive in the broadest sense. So yes, there are some women that may prefer skinny guys, but for the best overall appeal, which will lead to by far the most tremendous success with women purely based on a game of probability, it is in your best interest to have a good amount of musculature. Correlates of upper body strength are attractive in men, including having broader shoulders, being physically fit, and having greater hand grip strength. Men with greater hand grip strength also self-report that they are more attractive and have more tremendous mating success. Furthermore, numerous researchers have documented that physically taller men are more attractive. Finally, men appear to know that women find stronger men attractive. Cross-cultural data shows that men generally desire more muscular bodies to attract women. This study showed that men whose bodies were rated as more masculine were preferred to men whose bodies were rated as feminine. And a similar study using composite images confirmed that manipulating men's bodies to appear more masculine increased their attractiveness. This study proves my point even further. These correlations were examined to see if any women in their samples significantly preferred weaker men. They did not. None of the 160 women in their study who rated attractiveness produced a statistically significant preference for weaker men. This study used an eye tracker, tracking women's eye movements on men's bodies. The research shows that women pay more attention to the abdomen area of a man's body than anywhere else. Pictured is modeled David Gandy in an advert for the Marks and Spencer. While they were viewing the images, eye tracking technology was used to see which part of the photograph they were looking at, and for how long. The research found that both sexes spent longer looking at the body than at the face, but women looked at the men's abdomens more extensively than the chest or pectoral region, which was, in turn, viewed more than the genital area. Females also homed in on the abdomen longer and more frequently than males. According to eye tracking data, women seem to look at abs quite a lot, so it's safe to say train them abs and always maintain a visible six-pack. Muscle building is entirely dependent on male testosterone for apparent reasons. Specific muscle groups have a high androgen affinity towards testosterone. The proportion of AR containing myonuclei per fiber cross-section was higher in the trapezius. Traps, and thus the sternomastoid and neck, have a high androgen affinity. Explains why a thicker neck is observed here as a dimorphic trait. Women respond to broad shoulders far more powerfully than men respond to breasts, making suits the more powerful of the two. Do you know that lustful feeling that well-cloven cleavage can instill in you? Well, broad shoulders give women that same feeling, except strong. The neck pull and frame pull is well documented and should never be underestimated. I will make a more in-depth detailed video on neck training and neck maxing, as it's a severely underrated part of Looksmaxxing. As for frame maxing, that's coming soon as well. That's it for this video, guys. If you found this video helpful, please make sure you like it and leave your thoughts in the comments below, as it helps the YouTube algorithm.